The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the Leaders in Housing Counseling call. We'll give people just a minute or two to get on the call, and we'll get started shortly. Okay, well, this is the Leaders in Housing Counseling call, and here we are in the winter wonderland of Philadelphia with snow coming outside our window. And I imagine a few of you have that same situation, though I understand that there's some of you who have lovely balmy weather and lots of sun and no ice and snow at all. But for all the winter warriors and who are joining us, thanks. And happy shoveling, which I will do again tonight, as I did this morning and as I did on Monday, and many of us did. So let's see. So things are beginning to move on the housing counseling funding front in Congress. So Matthew, what's the story?
Hold on one sec. Oh, I'm not sure what happened to our slide.
Oh. Okay,
so we'll just wing it. Folks know we've mentioned repeatedly the President's budget requested $60 million for HUD housing counseling assistance and $45.7 million for NFMC funding. So those are the numbers that we're going to use when we're talking to Congress. On the idea being that those are the $60 million is what we had asked the President to include in the budget. We had asked for $50 million for NFMC, but are going to go with the lower number that the President used in his budget request, on the theory that a Republican-controlled Congress is not going to go any higher than what the President requested. So those are the numbers we're using. So the first step or next step in the process is going to be, so this month in the House, the members of the House will be submitting their letters to appropriators, to all the various appropriation subcommittees, requesting funding for the programs that they think are most important. So we do this every year, but this year we'll do a letter to every member of Congress as a sign-on letter, asking them to include in their, it's called the programmatic request letter to the THUD subcommittee, that they include those funding levels, $60 million for HUD housing counseling and $45.7 for NFMC. So this is the letter that we did last year. We had a great turnout. I forget the exact number, and Bruce may have a better idea.
480?
Yeah, so nearly 500 agencies signed on, which was awesome. We had just about every state represented, and that's going to be our goal this year. Will be to have every state represented, and to improve on that 480 groups signed on that we had last year. So that in the House, that letter, and we'll submit it to the Senate at the same time, but in the House, the letter is due March 25th. So it's going to be a fairly quick turnaround. I had on the original slide the actual link to the survey, but I'll just circulate that in a letter after the call, where the link to go on and sign your organization on. We're going to have a fairly quick turnaround time, so we're going to put it out today, and I think our deadline is going to be a week from tomorrow. We'll see. There may be some flexibility there, but we really want to get it to them in time for them to incorporate it into their budget request. I think that's all I have. Just, people have been great in the past about signing on, and really urge everyone to sign on again this year. Bruce, is there anything else you want to say?
Well, actually, no, I just want to kind of underscore sort of what happens here and what the steps are that groups can do that will really impact the process. So what really makes a difference to House and Senate representatives is that people from their district are asking them to take positions. And so there's kind of two steps to this process. So one is the sign-on letter. And we had 480 groups. We were missing 2 states. We had 48 states. We were missing Kansas and South Carolina. So we will make a special effort on those 2 states. And last year, the winning state in terms of the highest producing sign-ons was New York. So that's a challenge that we can have a little competition there to see who wants to come in and see who can spread their wings in their network the most. But it's very valuable to have these representations. And what we do is when your stuff comes in, what will happen is we will organize them by location so that anybody can go and look in their state and see which agencies have signed. And I think we've told the story before, but we were in Senator Pryor's office from Arkansas, and he said, "Oh yeah, I know you've got a lot of signers here, but let's see if Arkansas is here." And he's like, "Oh, you got 2," and that was actually very good, especially since he knew both organizations. And I know that your state can actually produce more than 2. So spreading the word, getting Indian Networks, getting this letter out in the broadest way possible, and following and turning it around quickly is important. So the second part of this, which Matthew touched on, is that the goal here is to get the representatives to send to the Appropriations Committee leadership what their requests are, what their priorities are, and this will be especially important to get Republican House members to, and Senate as well, to send to their leadership that housing counseling funding should be at the levels we recommend. We do have an advocate in the Appropriations Committee, not on THUD, but on the full Appropriations Committee, Charlie Dent, and he's already indicated he will be very supportive. But he is one person, a significant person, but what we will really need is the rank and file House and Senate members, especially Republicans, including housing counseling and at the levels that we talk about in their letter that they send, because they typically don't have a lot of items in there, and our housing counseling being on that list, which it has been in the past, very helpful. We'll kind of poke around if we can get a Dear Colleague letter, but it's unlikely, which is a letter that the Senate people and House people distribute among themselves. It's unlikely that Republicans would sign on to that letter, and that's what's most significant there, so probably not a lot of energy put into it. So, the key thing right now is signing the sign-on letter that we distribute, but then reaching out to your local offices, especially the Republican ones, asking them to include. In fact, Matthew, what we should do probably is just a very short letter memo kind of thing that groups could use as a template to give to their local representatives. So that's important stuff, and this will all. March 25th is the date when all the letters have to be in. So those requests really should go in next week, and at the latest the following week. But the earlier you're in the queue, the more likely you are to be successful here. And don't be shy about if somebody has contacted your representative already. It's great that they get contacts from multiple organizations saying that this is important to us, and we hope you can support us. All right. Some quick updates now, and these are very quick, and we're going to do kind of a looser thing than we normally do in our calls, which is I would love to have a little bit more of a discussion and hear from you in the field about what's going on and the kinds of things we need to think about that we should be working on, any kinds of issues that have arisen, things that are policy issues or maybe just nuances we should be aware of when we're thinking about the housing counseling work. I wanted to give you a few quick updates that we'll take a minute on, and then we'll have the rest of the call for discussion items. So think about things you'd like to raise and how best to raise them.
And I'll just say, folks can always use, when we get to that portion of the conversation, you can always use the question box. But if you're, especially if you're connected by the phone or if you're on the headset, you know, certainly if you raise your hand, it's great to get other voices going. And if it's only one person at a time, it should work fine. So maybe folks, when we're having the conversation, if folks want to jump in, feel free to use the question box or to raise your hand, and we'll call on you and unmute you.
Good. That's great. So, and raising your hand it's a button you click on your right-hand side of your control panel. Okay, so just quickly, so big questions are what's happening with HUD counselor certification and with the NOFA. So HUD, just because of regulations, aren't really allowed to tell us. Kind of the talk in the corridors is that they are struggling with technical issues in both cases, in both certification and with NOFA. There's some possibility they might come out early, some that it may get delayed depending on how the legal analyzes all these things. So it's really something that we're going to have to sort of be on the it could happen any time notice rather than significant dates. I know that we talked about March, and then there was a conversation that June might be the time when things would roll out. Neither of those are locked in, and apparently they're working very hard and have knotty issues to work out. It does look like with the NOFA there will be a supplemental NOFA for sure. I think we've talked about that in previous calls. So for agencies that were not eligible to apply last year for the NOFA, there would be an opportunity for them to apply this time around. And but not if you chose not to apply and you could have last year, you would not be eligible. But for new intermediaries or organizations that just formed, there are opportunities to do a NOFA through that. And as I understand it. So that's sort of the expectation here. We'll see what the actual outcome is. Springleaf Financial is actually has just become the largest subprime lender in the United States. They purchased what's it called, OneMain Financial from Citibank. And it turns out that they're the old American General Finance. And it's an institution that has about 2,000 branches all across the United States. I know when I was doing delinquency and predatory lending work, they would show up occasionally, and they typically had second position loans or unsecured loans that they did, relatively high interest rate, but not, as I recall, the cases I saw, not the most obscene predatory ones, but ones that were frustrating because they were expensive but not outrageously expensive. It didn't have quite the crazy terms that we used to see with Household Finance or Beneficial in the last decade of their career. They were not good at modification and they didn't fit in under the HAMP guidelines, and as I recall, they were a difficult servicer to deal with. But it's something that we should try to keep our eye out on, and we'd be very interested if you've had experience with them, especially recent experience with them. They are kind of large. They tend to be in kind of white working class city neighborhoods and in the suburbs, as I recall. And I did a quick look in Philly, and that was exactly the pattern they had when I looked yesterday. So if anybody's got any experience with Springleaf, please let us know, and one that we'd like to understand better and figure out if there's ways we should try to engage with them. On the Home Counselor Online, so a number of you submitted information about problems with HCO, and we basically just took what you gave us, either by email or in the survey, and gave it both to gave it both to Fannie Mae and to FHFA. At FHFA, Laura Arce, who is, some of you may remember, she worked at NCLR, and then I think she worked at Freddie, one of the GSEs for a while. But very conscientious person, kind of wanted to take this under her wing, had done some work with us last fall about problems, thought they'd been resolved, and so we've given her a new list. And I mean, they kind of break out into 3 buckets of issues. So one is people are still having problems with the helpline. There was one person who had good experiences, but a number of people continue to felt like it was too scripted, didn't have solutions that were needed, were slow on getting back, and didn't always get back at all. Second set of issues are around the data fields and how they populate, and we're not fitting in easily into HUD reporting, and we're not, and when things were put in where they felt like they should populate within a date range, turns out that there was data that showed up that was outside of the data range. So a couple people talked about that. So a series of issues that are really mechanical problems with HCO, and then the third set of issues I suspect are really a problem of training. It is a kind of an older program and isn't very intuitive, and the kind of training that's available has not been adequate to what people need. So we're going to, anybody who's submitted comments, we'll stay in touch with you, but if there are other people who would like to be part of the conversation about HCO and making it work better, please let us know, shoot us an email, and we'll create a kind of an email loop of people that we can, as things progress and as we learn more, we'll loop everybody in, and maybe we'll do a conference call with FHFA. Maybe we'll do it with Fannie. We'll see how they responded. They actually were happy that we not only gave it to FHFA, but gave it to them directly so they could see what the feedback was. Hopefully we can make some more progress there.
So with just one comment on the Springley Financial, Shelley Nelson said that she thinks that they do manufactured home loans, but the rates and fees are generally higher, which is her understanding.
Well, that's very helpful to know. And, you know, it's not, so manufactured homes is something we haven't talked a lot about, but it's an important source of affordable housing for working people and retired people, as we all know. And it's an interesting field. So Berkshire Hathaway is owns several of the lending companies that lend to manufactured homes, and of course that's Warren Buffett's company. During Hurricane Katrina, we were involved in a number of cases where people were not really offered much alternative, even though they were storm-damaged houses, and we're able to get them to move and actually do modifications that they initially said they wouldn't. So I mean that's an area that if there's a lot of interest, we should try to figure out how to pull people together on it. They tend not to be so much involved in the policy debate, but it certainly represents an important housing choice in some of our markets. So glad to hear about it, and if there's lots of people interested, we should try to figure out if there's some things we can do that'd be helpful. And I think there's some public interest groups that are doing some work in the field as well that we could link up with.
All right. And Lloyd London has his hand raised, so I'm going to see. Sometimes it just happens spontaneously, but we're going to see if Lloyd has a question or a comment. Are you there, Lloyd?
Yes, I sent it in as a question. My experience with them has been as American General. And in North Carolina and on Indian reservations, they made some very high-cost loans that we consider predatory because of the fees and the interest rates.
Very interesting. And are they fixed rate or are they adjustables?
Most were fixed.
That's what I
And there were a
thought.
lot of them were on manufactured loans in North Carolina. In fact, they did probably the majority of manufactured loans in North Carolina.
Wow, really interesting. And some idea about what the rate was, what the premium on the rate is? Do you know offhand?
As I remember, the rates were generally in double digits, and the fees were a bit excessive, but they were very hard to deal with as far as any modifications and or workout agreements. And when they did do a workout, generally they were simple interest loans also, which was a cause of concern.
Well, that's interesting, and I had the same experience. So they're actually owned by, or a hedge fund called Fortress owns 80% of them, and so maybe we ought to think about trying to approach Fortress about getting different solutions for these. Well, this is good. This is very helpful. And so when you talk about you see these, is this because you've seen 2 or 3, or do you see a lot of them?
Well, this was probably before 2008, and saw a considerable amount.
Okay.
Saw a considerable amount when I was at
Right.
NCRC.
Okay. Interesting. Well, that's very helpful. So I'm going to check in with the NCRC folks about it as well. Well, good. Very helpful. And are there? And do you know? Are they branded as Springleaf in North Carolina? Do they have offices?
I don't know at this time if they are or not.
Yeah.
I haven't done any real research on them lately.
I had never heard of them, and then there's like 5 offices in the Philadelphia area. So pretty interesting. Good. Well, thank you so much for calling in. Let's see. So I think we should try to figure out if there are issues that you are that you feel like we should be working on. One of the
I'll just
okay.
say
Oh, good. All right, it's working.
All right. So Heather Massow wrote in. She asked if you thought the Greenleaf case in Maine with the MERS issues, that with that case, that foreclosures, there'll be an influx of foreclosures again. That's not something I've followed closely. I don't know if you have, and if you have any.
I don't know much about it, so I'd love to hear about it, but I'm not familiar with it at all.
And then someone else said that they've heard rumors that Fannie's planning to sunset HCO, and asked if you knew if there was any truth to this.
Okay, so there's no question that Fannie has not been investing in HCO the way we would like. People that I don't have as many contacts in Fannie as I used to, but a couple of people I do know insist that there's been no decision made to abandon it, but there's a lot of tension about how much to invest in it. So I'd say at this point there's no evidence that they are really going to abandon it. HUD, we have been, and HUD has been very clear, and I think that they understand as well that if they were going to stop going with HCO, that there would have to be a very good, well-funded transfer someplace else. And the tricky thing with HCO is that it's different than NeighborWorks because it's based on the Fannie Mae platform and relies on the same engine that does their desktop underwriting. So it's not like you could just break it off and separate it out. But I'm not technically competent to understand how those issues might work. But it's so far there's no indication that Fannie will walk away from it. But if they do, there's certainly been, they've heard the signal, and we think that they understand that it would not be a stopping it. It would need to be a transfer someplace else.
All right. So we're kind of bouncing back and forth, but back to the Springleaf issue.
Oh, yeah.
So Eric Gillespie is also in North Carolina, and just clarified that they are doing business as Springleaf there, but also that his understanding is that they're only doing consumer loans now, not doing any originations in loans secured by real estate. And then Linda Gerkensmeyer has her hand raised, so I'm going to see if Linda is there and has something she wants to share with us. Hi, Linda, are you there?
Linda, can you hear us?
Oh, she wrote something in.
Okay.
So
I was going to ask her how many inches of snow she's got.
So Linda said that she has a client that's been put into default over a forced escrow situation by SLS. They have researched the internet, and apparently there are many people that have experienced a similar situation. And she asked if NHRC could be helpful in getting some attention and support for people that have experienced this. So people being forced into default over a forced escrow situation by SLS.
So forced escrow means that your taxes and insurance is being set aside. I think we need to understand more of it. But if that means that somebody's having their taxes and insurance set aside, I mean, the problem is that does need to get paid. Unless what it is sometimes the servicer picks up the cost. Well, I think we need to understand more about it. But we should understand what that means, forced escrow in this particular case. Good. Any others in the queue? We had a meeting with FHFA a couple weeks ago with Mel Watt. I think we talked about it in the previous call. And the question came up about were there credit overlays on Fannie and Freddie loans. And some of the FHFA people thought that they had been done away with. So that's one question we've got is, are you seeing credit score minimums or other kinds of overlays on Fannie and Freddie loans that make it harder for people to qualify? The second question I'd be very interested in understanding is, has anybody seen the 97% LTV loans? I think Fannie has had it out, and Freddie's is now out. So the question is, are we seeing these in the field? So I think Fannie and Freddie are telling FHFA that they're doing a lot of them, but the big question is, are you seeing them? And then if people are able to apply for them, are they able to actually qualify for them? So any information you've got on that would be very, very interesting. And I'm going to throw out a couple other ideas of things that, just kick around in our office, and we would love to know what your thinking is on them. So another one is on rental counseling. So this turns out to be a very big part of our business. And it's always in the top 3, but it's often in the top 2. If you combine the 9902 reports, and except for the height of the foreclosure crisis, rental counseling often beat out delinquency counseling, occasionally even beat out pre-purchase counseling. So we're doing a lot of it in the field. We don't know very much about what it looks like and who's doing it. And I know that there's always been a strong contingent in New York and in San Francisco for that kind of counseling. I know National Capacity in their role in the Asian and API community, Pacific Islander community, have done a fair amount of the rental counseling, but it really doesn't get much attention at HUD. It doesn't get that much attention from us, and I always wonder, is this are we missing the boat here on some important thing? Certainly, in the wake of the foreclosure crisis, we have a population of people who have lost their houses who now need to find affordable rentals, and it'd be very interesting if there's some models that people have developed. I remember in Arizona that I'd heard about but never actually located. There was a group that basically did pre-screening for landlords of people who are coming out of foreclosure, and could help the landlord basically say these folks are going to be reliable pays. They just were unlucky at the time on the foreclosure, and so you're now able to rent an affordable apartment. And it seemed like a good synergy between figuring out the best exit and preventing people from becoming homeless, and a very positive program. Well, we need to know about things like that and help people think about what the models might be. So any thoughts on that? We're very interested in it.
There's things on various things, not on that specifically. So with the Fannie and Freddie issue, Vera Morales said that the My Community product, with the overlays, My Community product, My Community Mortgage product, I think it is, typically has an add-on to the rate, she says, because of the community product. So that, I guess that's responding that they're...
So it's a higher rate.
That's the impression I'm getting from...
Interesting, because My Community Mortgage actually has a kind of a rate discount that it comes with, theoretically, partly because of the counseling component. That's interesting. So it'd be interesting to know which lender does that, or if there's several lenders.
All right, so Cheryl Brown from Nashville, snowy Nashville, said she just got her first foreclosure, her first spring leaf foreclosure client on Tuesday, just submitted the mod package, and will keep us posted as to how they respond.
Good. We'd be very interested in the loan terms, the original loan terms as well, and if it's secured and unsecured.
All right.
Well, I guess if it's a foreclosure, it's secured. Right.
Then to raise another kind of topic for discussion, Ellie Pepper is interested in hearing what folks are seeing regarding principal reduction offers under the justice settlements with B of A, Citi, and Chase. So if folks have thoughts or input that they can share on what, if anything, they're seeing in terms of principal reductions that are coming out of those three settlements, that would be really interesting to hear.
And let me just underscore that even if you've only seen one, we're interested in it. I mean, what's weird here is that I have not been hearing about any, so we're very interested in anything you've seen. We know that Bank of America offers went out. The question is who they went out to. And it's largely, so Bank of America, what they said on theirs to me was that they are not offering principal reduction on Fannie or Freddie product, which is the bulk of their business, and they're only doing it on their own portfolio products, and then there's only a very narrow band within the private label security where they could offer principal reduction. So it's largely their portfolio products that they're doing it in, but still we should be seeing those.
All right. So Pam Carmichael responded regarding the rental counseling, and she said Home Inc. has been doing the rental counseling, and Landlord Tenant Counseling since 1974. They serve about 2,500 households per year. It is general information about rental housing, rights for landlords and tenants. They also do an education for tenant groups. And then Song Hutchins said that she sees lenders pushing for it. I'm not sure when she made this comment, so hopefully you'll know what she's saying. But she says they're pushing for it with some very lean document requirements, such as one-year tax returns and one-month bank statements, et cetera, with low credit scores between 620 and 640.
Well, so maybe that's the 97% product.
Okay.
So that's thin documentation. That's interesting. But 620, 640 credit score is probably still within the range of what could be done with Fannie, which means there's no credit overlay on that particular deal. Interesting. Good. Keep them coming.
All right. So Ellie Pepper again said she's heard of two BOA PRA offers in New York. One was a property originally mortgaged for nearly $600,000, and not the most needy, and one was that one that was on a second mortgage where the first mortgage was with a different lender. So I guess those are the two things she's seen, modifications she's seen coming out of the B of A settlement, and making the point that they're not getting to the folks who could benefit most. And I guess with the $600,000 mortgage, that's a good way for them to get it's a high impact for them in terms of a bigger dollar amount going to their settlement, what they need to satisfy, but not helping the folks with the most need.
Yeah, it's a high-priced market, but well, it depends actually if it's in the Albany area. Then it's not. So it depends on where Ellie's property is, I guess, too. That's very interesting. Any others that have come in?
No, that's what we've got for now.
So we should think about if there's. So please feel free to let us know about seeing any of the principal reductions. More information on the 97% LTV. If there's interest in the field about doing something on rental, we should get a task force together and sort of brainstorm what should happen. But I think this needs to come from the grassroots, from you all. We'd be happy to convene stuff and get materials and pull together resource people. But the first thing is we need to really find the constituency for this. And we do know that a lot of it's going on, but I'm not sure we're tapping. So Pam's contribution is very helpful. I think we'd be interested in it. And I think the big other challenge with rental counseling is figuring out a business model that pays its way. And something I've had a conversation with Sarah Jericho about. That's sort of where she went immediately too, is we have to figure out a viable business model to make it work. But if there's interest in that, we should form a task force and move forward. One of the areas that we've done a lot of work in the past year on is in improving communications with HUD and improving on the reporting systems, and ignoring the snafu with HCO coming in late for the instead of January 1st, January 12th. I'm wondering if, besides that, what our experience is. Are we getting better relations with our point of contacts? Does the complaint system work? Have you tried it out? Are we pleased with what we're the kind of communications that we're having with HUD? I did talk to Sarah on Monday, and she just sort of on her own said that the list that the HUD task force put together is on everybody's desk and is squarely in everybody's mind. And so this has been very helpful, but we should really figure out if it's working well in the field or not right now. So feel free to weigh in on that. Raise your hand or put it in the question box. Periodically, people talk to me, mention reverse mortgages, and are there things that need to get done there? Is everything being addressed the way it should be? I know there's a lot of very good work that's being done on widows and heirs on property where it's a reverse mortgage where it's in one person's name and the person dies, and I think it's a work in progress. But are there other things we should be aware of? I know the Council on Aging people have been doing some very good work in all this, and we should really try to figure out if there's, maybe it's all being taken care of, but if there's a role we want to play or should play, let's think about it. No need to add anything else to our list unless there's demand for it. But we do talk to the right people to get things done. So we'd love to. We can pull together a task force if it's needed there. So I would say we're always kind of interested in, we sort of view our work as a work in progress where we can always learn from the field about what you're doing and how to make it the most effective possible for NHRC to get involved in things. So if you've got some thoughts, shoot us an email. Let us respond and see what we can develop. If you're interested in kind of a deeper dive on HCO issues and you did fill in the survey or send us an email in the last couple of weeks, let me know, and we've built up a list of people who are who we will stay in touch with on the HCO issues. And definitely we need to figure out if there's more that needs to be done on as work on the HUD task force.
So I'll just quickly, we just got one more comment, which I think the answer is to follow up with us. But so Heather Massow has a client whose husband passed away last summer. When the reverse mortgage was written by Wells, they removed her name from the deed. Now Wells is looking to foreclose, and the widow does not have the funds to assume the mortgage, and she's just asking for advice on what to do.
So I'm not skilled enough at this to be the right person to do this. I mean, I would, there's two things I would do. One of which would go to a legal aid attorney, and then the other one is there's been some advocacy work being done on this, and it involves, I'm trying to think now of the groups, so Council on Aging and Ramsey in their office is very good, and shoot me an email, I'll give you the contact information. And then the on this whole widows and orphans question, which impacted the organizations that impacted the reverse mortgages as well. I think that the National Consumer Law Center did some work as well, and the California Reinvestment Coalition. So maybe we can try to figure out who might be resource people in that. So just shoot us a quick email, and we'll try to link you up with folks who are working in this field. But also, you probably need some local legal assistance.
I will just add that Fannie and Freddie both have made, with a lot of pushing from advocates, they both made some improvement. It's been a while since I looked at what they did, but they tried to have a clearer policy and to kind of simplify the surviving, the streamlining the process of when there's a surviving either spouse or whoever trying to take over the mortgage, or so there's been some progress made. So maybe it's one of those may be applicable if it's a Fannie or Freddie.
Well, and the tricky thing is that was in regard to the servicing standards. The typical reverse mortgage is an FHA mortgage, so it's a little bit different zone. And when we brought up, well, I mean, we should get you to the right folks, and we'll try to provide at least some connections there that will help work on those issues. Good. Well, listen, it's a snowy day here in Philadelphia, and I hope your weather is easier. And I appreciate the input here. Please feel free to keep this rolling. We are, we've got, look out for the letter, the sign-on letter, which will go out this afternoon, and we'd really appreciate it if you would circulate that, not just in your office, but get it outside and circulating to any networks you've got. We really need to push this, and hopefully this time around we'll break 500 and we'll hit 50 states. Any sister organizations you've got in South Carolina or Kansas, make sure they get on. And we should do a special push in Nevada because it's such a key state. The second thing is a reminder that it's very, very important to communicate with your local, especially Republican House and Senate offices, about including housing counseling on their programmatic letter that they submit to the leadership on appropriations. And so those two things kind of will be our priority for the next couple of weeks, along with for the usual things we do. Okay, well, good talking with you all, and we're going to close out the call a little bit early, so some of us can get back to shoveling. All right, thanks a lot.